Well, Razorback fans, you have a pretty weird and tough game against Vanderbilt tonight. Will the Razorbacks bounce back? Guess we're going to talk about on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday as, hey, there's basketball tonight. I feel like it's been pretty rare this year, for the Razorbacks at least, to play on a Tuesday night. And I don't really know why. If I could get, this is off topic, but if I could get Greg Sankey on the podcast coming up at SEC Football Media Days, because that's usually the best time to get him, I want to ask him like what goes into these schedules and whatnot. But the only time that Arkansas has actually played a Tuesday night SEC game, or just a Tuesday game in general, was against LSU on the road, which didn't go well, as we all know. But that was back in January 14th. But this game, as we know, it's 9 p.m. It's dumb. I know. It's on the SEC Network. There's no way that game's going to start on time on the SEC Network. We know. But it's a pretty crucial and pivotal game for many different reasons. I was looking at some of the history between Arkansas and Vanderbilt, and I was a little surprised to see that Arkansas actually owns a 30-15 advantage in the series. And Arkansas has beaten them 29 times and only lost 14 times in SEC meetings. However, in the games played over at Memorial Gym, where they're going to be playing tonight, the series is tied at 8-8 for both teams. And Arkansas has had some really nice wins there. I remember the Daryl Macon game, as everyone does when he was fouled on the final shot, or at least close to the final shot on a 3-point and goes to the free throw line. Remember that game? Remember Michael Qualls having a big win up there too. And so there's been some memorable times, but it's just interesting though. It's just interesting how this arena is, this game, this time, this day, everything is going to be fascinating about it. And I think if you look at the big picture, what's also fascinating about it is you have Arkansas, who's definitely fallen below the expectations so far this year, and Vanderbilt, who has exceeded expectations this year. Vanderbilt is a bona fide NCAA tournament team. They have had a lot of great wins there. So it's not exactly like you're going into the game itself extremely confident. It's hard to do that at that time. But Arkansas is going to try to do their best, and they're going to try to make up for it and having this quick turnaround and find a way to get it going. Adu Thero's not playing. We don't know the extent of his injury as far as when he's going to be coming on board or when he's going to be playing or anything like that. You hope for the end of the regular season and maybe even into postseason play. That's what you're hopeful for. But at the end of the day, this is something that you're just going to have to live without. You can't count on him, and you can't sit there and hope and pray that he comes back and then just expect people to roll over and die for you in these games, because that's just not the case. You got to play with who you got. And with what Vanderbilt has, they're a really good team. Think about Thero too, is it's not just you're missing a great player, but you're missing your leading scorer, you're missing your leading rebounder, and you're going to have to adapt. Now, the thing about Vanderbilt is that they actually have an offense that scores 80 points a game roughly, but their defense gives up 74 points a game. Pretty balanced, though. Field goal percentage is pretty comparable to Arkansas at 45%. The rebounding per game is about even. This is what's crazy. So Arkansas is averaging 34.8 rebounds a game. Vanderbilt's 35.1. So you're talking about 0.3 difference. Assist, Arkansas, 14.4 assists per game. Vanderbilt, 14.3 assists per game. Pretty spot on. Now, block shots is where Arkansas does have a little bit of an edge because of Big Z and others. But they're averaging about 5.6 blocks a game. Vanderbilt is 4 blocks a game. Steals, though, on the other side, Arkansas 7.8, and then Vanderbilt's at 9.2. So you have a few of these stats and a few of these things that are looking out at the numbers and how everything's going and what it looks like for Arkansas and why the balance comes into play. And if you look at the BPI, some of you do, some of you don't. It doesn't matter. But for ESPN, that gives Vanderbilt a 60% chance of winning this game. If you look at some of the odds makers, you have Vanderbilt favored by a touchdown in this game by 7 points. It's all setting up for you to lose. Let's just be honest about it. It's setting up for you to lose. So will you? Certainly hope not. You want Arkansas to win every game, especially considering that this would be one of those games that would all but ensure you a spot in the NCAA tournament. And you can go into a building that's hard to win in, and other teams have struggled. Ever really good teams have struggled to win in. And beating a bona fide NCAA tournament team that's at 8-8 in conference play and 20-9 overall. But all things seem to be pointing to you not winning. Take out the stats. Take out the spread. Take out the numbers. Take out all those things. You are hurt like crazy. Your depth is killing. You traveled all the way to South Carolina and it didn't go well. You came back and you're having to travel again. It's a quicker turnaround because it is a Tuesday game. It's a late night game. It's at 9 p.m. And everything seems like, if you're a betting person, go heavy on Vanderbilt. Just bet the crap out of them. And most people would probably be with you. But I'm hoping that the predictable things that seem so easy for Arkansas once again become wrong. And what I mean by that is that Arkansas this season, time and time again, have proven me, have proven you, have proven us wrong. Sometimes in a good way and sometimes in a bad way. There's no doubt that what this team has done so far this season, it's definitely not been great. It's not been what everyone was expecting. So the big picture part of it is that they definitely have not lived up to what we all thought that they would be. And not just us as fans. We're talking about national media. We're talking about everybody across the board in the SEC. Arkansas has not done that. But even in the season, the way it's gone itself, the non-conference slates, you saw them lose games like to Baylor, to Illinois. And then you were like, jeez, this team is no good. They can't figure it out. Oh, man, that game, though, oh, jeez, you kidding me? They got to go to Madison Square Garden and play Michigan? Well, that's not going to go well for them. Well, Arkansas won it. They won that game. Now, when Arkansas started SEC play, it was a pretty brutal schedule. I mean, you started on the road against number 1 Tennessee at the time. You had Ole Miss at home, and Florida came out of nowhere, ended up being such a much better team than what people predicted. But it's like, hey, if you can just go 1-2 in those games, you set yourself up with some easy games against LSU and Missouri coming up. Well, Missouri ended up also being much better than what people anticipated. You start off 0-5. Georgia, you finally figure some things out. You finally learned how to win a little bit. And then you got confident. I got confident. I'm like, okay, they figured something out here. They were down against Georgia. They battled back. They have a very good, easy, winnable game against Oklahoma coming up. It's on a Saturday. It's perfect because they got to get that one before they have this tough stretch and this tough road against really high-quality teams. And they lose to Oklahoma. No one would have predicted that. But the very next game, you go on the road to Kentucky. A game I said that there's just doesn't seem to be many chances or any reason to believe that Arkansas would win that game. Just talent-wise and on paper, Kentucky was much better. They were playing much better. Seemed to have all the things going their way. Well, guess what? Arkansas won. I thought that this team was down and out against Alabama. They were down by 20 points. It's like, jeez, man, Alabama's just too good. You have no chance in this one. And then with 6 minutes to go, you storm back. Now, you didn't win, but you made it a one-possession game at the very end. I wouldn't have predicted that. You went on the road to A&M and Auburn, top 10 teams, places that are really, really difficult to play. You should have beaten A&M. That was a frustrating one. But one game that I never would have dreamed in a million years that you'd even be close in would be the Auburn game. But you should have won that one too. You should have. But you surprised me. I thought Missouri was going to beat Arkansas. I was on record on this podcast saying, I don't feel good about this one. But Arkansas won. And I felt for sure that Arkansas would beat South Carolina, the worst team in the SEC. They didn't. Played their worst game. Now, I say all of that, folks, and the recapping of all of that, which I'm sure a lot of you enjoyed, but I say all that to make my point. This team this year has been more unpredictable than any team that I can remember in Razorback basketball. There's no go-to one guy. There's no consistent, like, they're going to struggle in this particular aspect of this game. They're going to get out-rebounded in this game. There's nothing about this team that any of us can predict and any of us can know. Which is why, with all these signs pointing towards Arkansas losing tonight against Vanderbilt, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they won. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they don't play a great offensive game. Nelly Davis and Big Z hitting threes like crazy. Vanderbilt can't find their way to get shots off, and Arkansas locks them down defensively. I could see that totally happening. I hope it does. It'd be great. And I'm not saying it will. But given how this season has gone and the unpredictability of everything about them, if all the signs on paper and all the reasons are set up for Arkansas to lose this game, why would I think it would actually happen? Hasn't happened before. Why would it start now? Let's hope that's the case. It'd be so much fun to talk about a win over Vanderbilt than a loss, I can tell you that. I'm going to talk something about Bud Walton Arena, some stuff that got thrown around yesterday, and I want to set the record straight on some of the additions and changes that are coming, but we'll get to that in a second, so stay with us here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, I'm going to tell you about one of our fun sponsors here, and it is the Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that made for skilled trades. It's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order your products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Some of you may not know of this, and that's fine, but a lot of you were asking me about this, texting me, DMing me, and dealing with the changes or the trade changes of Bud Walton Arena that are going to be coming. Somehow, some way, some rumors, some speculation or whatever got out yesterday about a few things dealing with the new seating arrangements with Bud Walton Arena, which we've talked about pretty in depth. But one of them was getting thrown around that the student section was going to be moving only to the second level, and that's it behind the goal. When I heard that, I was saying there's just no chance that that's happening. No chance it's happening. But I got to confirm that it's not happening. So any of you that thought that the student section is going to be moving just to the second level of Bud Walton Arena, it's not happening. It's not even anywhere close. In fact, it's not going to really be going anywhere or really having any major changes on that front. But I did want to continue to talk about the seating arrangements and the seating and priority and everything that's going to be set up moving forward. Because as all of you know, I've been very passionate about the way that Bud Walton has lost a little bit of its luster. Not all of it, but a little bit of it this year. And there was a lot of reasons for it to happen. There was a lot of people to blame. I mean, we could sit here all day long and talking about it and discussing it. But overall, when you just put it into the perspective of the changing times of college basketball and college sports in general, it's understandable as to why they want to make sure that, hey, everyone's taking care of the best. Because as in business or whatever, if you have somebody that's paying $5,000 for elite seats, and then somebody says, hey, I want to pay $20,000 for those elite seats, odds are you're going to give it to the $20,000 person, or at least give the opportunity to those who are giving $5,000 to give up to that amount. It's a free market. I mean, it's just the way it is. I can't really hate on that, because if that was the case, I mean, you would not be able to really make any money or be able to turn profit in a lot of ways. I know it's not always about money for some, but in that particular case, I understand. But the main thing, though, is that after going to other places like Auburn when I went there, or Kentucky with Rupp Arena, and seeing just the approach and seeing how it's done and how it's handled with the fans and everything, it just seems like they are so set up for consistent success and fun and entertainment and energy. I still believe Bud Walton Arena has a much better atmosphere than whatever would be portrayed in these other places. Even after going to Auburn and Rupp, they were really good atmospheres, great atmospheres, but I'd still put Bud Walton at its best above those places. But it just seems like they have set those places up where people know what to expect and people feel involved, they feel a part of it, and it feels right. And when I come to Bud Walton Arena, I just haven't felt that this year. I think a lot of it has to do with, all the marketing and stuff. I think a lot of it has to do with the student section and how bad it's been. I'm just being honest. It's been pretty awful, and I don't think it's just like one or two people. I'm talking about the entire collective group. You have 40,000 kids that go to that school, and you can't find 2,000 of them to be crazy energized and fired up for Razorback basketball, especially with John Calipari been there. So I think there's a lot of factors into it. But the point is, I think the U of A, and I've been very critical of the University of Arkansas, and I will continue to be critical of the University of Arkansas if they deserve to be criticized for certain things. But the one thing that I am at least giving them some credit on the approach that they are taking when it comes to changing certain things when it comes to Bud Walton Arena is, yes, the seating thing sucks, but the way that they're making sure that they get it right and not try to overdo it from the jump. As weird as it is to say. There were so many times, and this is in past 15, 20 years with Razorback Athletics, that you felt like any change that happened was a sudden thing. Boom, there it was in your face. And there's nothing you could do about it. I think back to when the Slobber Hog got taken off. Like, that was a major change of when the Slobber Hog was no longer on the court. And nobody could have a say in it. It's just boom, there it was. Or when he switched over from Coke to Pepsi, just boom, there it was. There was just so many things that changed immediately in a massive way, and you felt like you had no say in it. And it felt like it was just ripping the Band-Aid off and moving forward. But at least what I feel like from the U of A and from the marketing, from everybody and the perspective, is they maybe float some things out and see what the reaction is. And I really am hoping that they continue to do that and continue to understand how important having an atmosphere like Bud Walton Arena is at its best, and also making sure that they're making the most out of it when it comes to their money, because they got to make money. I get it. But I just wish that they would continue to work with the fans on that. I know that it may not matter to some over there at the U of A. It may not, but it matters to me of being able to stick your chest out all proud and such and be like, well, my team has one of the best atmospheres in college basketball. My arena is so difficult to win at. And we've heard it for years from other coaches in the SEC, outside the SEC field, that come into Bud Walton Arena, and they're like, this is not an easy place to win at. Not many teams win at this place. I mean, that's just how it is. But I don't want that to ever go away, and I don't want that to ever not be the case, because it's such a proud thing that you can have that's unique to you. And I like that about so many things about Arkansas and about the Razorbacks, is just the uniqueness of stuff that you could be proud of, that everyone's on board with. Like the Razorback mascot in general, it's very unique. It's its own. The calling of the Hogs is very unique. The fight song is an original fight song. Just the basic stuff, but also something like Bud Walton Arena. The way it was built, the way it is, the way the energy is filled with, and they need to focus more so on keeping that element to it, because it does its own marketing and promoting when you are constantly, year after year after year, knowing and hearing about that building being one of the best in the country. It's an attraction, and you want to keep that attraction going. So hopefully they continue to work with people on this. Hopefully it doesn't get too crazy, but I just wanted to set the record straight on some of the changes that are going on. That's not one of them, is the student section moving up to the second deck. I don't even think they have the balls to do something like that. At least they shouldn't, but still. We'll have plenty to discuss, I'm sure, when all that happens, and I'm sure everybody will be totally fine with it as well. We'll get to the final segment, talk a little spring game action. Oh yeah, baby. Spring game here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, so stay with us. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So we have a thing happening that's called spring practice. It's going to be here before we know it. And I haven't really had a chance to talk much about it because, to be honest, people have been so invested in basketball, and then with baseball starting up, it hasn't really been on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. But one of the things that we're starting to see along college football is the end of spring games. A lot of other schools are doing it. Nebraska was one of the few that started it, and we've seen other big schools cancel it. I think Oklahoma is another school that's canceled it. Arkansas is not. So they can call it the red-white game, spring game, whatever it is, but they're not going to be canceling it. But other schools are, and the question becomes, should schools cancel the spring game? Well, do you want to know my opinion? Yes. Yes. I think spring games should go away. Spring games had a purpose about 10 or so years ago, because it was, again, going back to the marketing thing, it was a big thing to market how many people you had at the spring game, and it really was a good barometer of showing the excitement that a particular fan base had for their school if they have a ton of people showing up for just a spring game and the festivities to go along with it, and it provides that energy and excitement for things. Well, it seems that has gone by the wayside. The only time, and I'm talking about almost every school now, because there'll be some schools that have a bunch of people no matter what, just because they're massive fan bases. But really the only thing that drives an excitement for a spring game is a new coach, is when a new head coach is there. And if it's a new head coach that people are excited about, especially. And so I just don't feel like the spring games are worth it. We can have scrimmages that are open to the public. I'm fine with that. But to have this big ordeal and have the SEC network broadcasting it, it just doesn't do it for me anymore. You can replace it with so many different things. You can have some other festivities. You can have some other fan days. You can have, I always thought it'd be cool to have a flag football game of former players. I don't know, something crazy like that. But just have something that's, whatever. But a spring game itself, I don't care. And that being said, those coaches that are out there saying that they're not doing a spring game because of scouting and other schools getting a look at guys to get them out of the transfer portal, I think is complete and total nonsense. I really do. If a coach, this is the day and age of social media, folks. If a coach wants a player out of the portal in the springtime, they're going to try and do whatever it takes to get that player. And I just don't see any coach last year, for instance, just sitting down on his couch after his spring practices are over. He turns on the TV, turns on the tube, and checks out a random spring practice, spring game for a certain team. Be like, man, who's that number 86? Sheesh, he looks good in the spring game against the second stringers. Let's get this guy a scholarship. Let's get him some NIL money. Hey, Frank, it's number 86. It's got 2 catches for 2 touchdowns and 167 yards. Get him on. Do whatever it takes. I just don't see anybody going to that stretch. If you're a good player, you're a good player. And no one's going to be scouting oh, geez, watch out because of the spring game. Don't see that happen. It just seems like such a cop-out answer. So, point is, if they do the spring game, that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and demand that they stop a spring game. But if it went away, I definitely would not mind whatsoever. And again, it served a purpose for once. Y'all heard my idea of what I feel like spring games should become bowl games. You should go against other teams. I think that would be one way to provide some interest. I think it'd be fun to play an Oklahoma State or Oklahoma or whoever in a spring game matchup. It's just a scrimmage, kind of like what the NFL does with their scrimmages. It'd be fun. Do something like that, and maybe I could get down with it, but at the end of the day, I really don't care. It's spring practice. But it is fun to have some football to talk about, which I know we will. We will here on the Locked On Razorbacks. But hey, that does it for me. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.